We're going to cover Chapter 24, Bankruptcy, Reorganization, and Liquidation, out of order, since bankruptcy is so closely related to bonds. Debt holders are the only ones who can force a company into bankruptcy. This is a relatively short chapter that expands on the material at the end of Chapter 5 concerning the process of bankruptcy from a corporate perspective, which entails Chapter 11 or Chapter 7. Obviously, bankruptcy is driven by financial failure, but that's often combined with poor economic conditions. A young firm takes on too much debt and the economy tanks. It can, of course, also be driven by poor product or location. Brutally speaking, if customers do not choose to buy your product or service, there's no way to sustain your business. As one might expect, business failures tend to fluctuate with the economy, which can force a marginal firm out of business. Small firms are more likely to face bankruptcy, since their resources are typically more limited. The key issues are listed here and on the next slide, and boil down to the big overriding question: is the firm worth saving? If the problem is temporary, perhaps a workaround can be found. If permanent, probably not. If some action must be taken, should it be a formal bankruptcy filing or some type of informal workout? Will management be allowed to remain in control during the process? Formal bankruptcy is extremely costly, so if some type of informal procedure is possible, it should be explored. We'll look at the definition of these terms on the following slides. Formal bankruptcy is characterized not only by high legal fees, but the indirect cost of business disruption for customers, suppliers, and employees. Workouts are informal reorganizations. Basically, the troubled firm works with creditors to revise the terms of the debt so it can be paid off. Creditors may extend the dates of payments due, extension, or accept reduced amounts, composition. An informal liquidation may involve a process called assignment, which transfers title to the firm's assets to a trustee who oversees the liquidation and payment to creditors. This works much like a formal liquidation, but can be handled faster and at less cost. Chapter 11 is probably the most important section of federal bankruptcy law. It governs the process of firm reorganization. Chapter 7 details the liquidation process. While a trustee is typically assigned in a liquidation, if there is suspicion of fraud or incompetent management, a trustee may be assigned to oversee the reorganization process as well. Typically, in a Chapter 11 filing, management stays in control. Bankruptcy filings may be voluntary, a decision made by the firm itself, or involuntary, forced by the distressed firm's creditors. The primary advantages of an informal process are the reduced expense, reduced time to complete, and the fact that creditors typically recover more money. Formal bankruptcy, by its very nature as being very regimented, does prevent some potential problems. With a formal bankruptcy filing, the firm can, and usually does, arrange DIP, debtor in possession financing, to keep the firm running while the reorganization is worked out. In addition, with the formal process, debt payments are delayed while the process plays out. While within the time limits of the law, the debtor has the exclusive right to submit a reorganization plan. A prepackaged bankruptcy is, as the name implies, a complete, formal reorganization plan worked out in advance of the legal filing. The plan is filed with the petition and speeds the reorganization process while preserving the legal strength of a formal filing. In Chapter 5, we looked at the order of claims in a Chapter 7 liquidation, and they're repeated here and continued on the next slide. The main things to note are that secured creditors are near the top of the list, while common stockholders are at the bottom, and they rarely get anything in a liquidation. Russ Brothers is from the mini case. From the balance sheet, these are the creditors' claims against Russ Brothers, with the debentures subordinated to notes payable. This table details the proceeds from the sale of Russ Brothers' assets, 16.5. And here's how the proceeds were distributed. Accrued wages, taxes, and mortgages were first in line for distribution. As you can see in the notes, the fixed assets proceeds went to the first mortgage, leaving nothing for the second mortgage holder. The full claims for wages and taxes were honored. So of the 16.5 proceeds from the sale of assets, 3.5 has been distributed, leaving 13 for the other creditors. The remaining unsecured creditors received funds as shown in the table. Note, the notes payable were paid in full. All proceeds from the sale of the fixed assets went to the first mortgage holder, leaving nothing for the second mortgage. Both accounts payable and the subordinated debenture holders received some distribution. This does give a fairly good idea of how distributions in bankruptcy go. Bankruptcy has been used as a strategic move by firms facing serious union issues or huge liability claims. For example, Manville due to their asbestos claims. Current bankruptcy laws have come under criticism. If you look at the claims priority list, you'll see the trustee fees are up near the top, causing some to say too much goes to lawyers and trustees. If a company limps along in Chapter 11 for too long, the value of its assets may be depressed before creditors have a chance to recoup anything. They were left alive too long. Finally, companies operating in bankruptcy can hurt other firms in the same industry. While they're operating under strict rules, they're not having to pay down their debt, and they may have been able to break union contracts. The bankruptcy laws were changed in 2005, limiting the time that management has to file a reorganization plan, after which creditors can propose a plan themselves. This concludes Chapter 24 and this unit.